What does my freshman year of high school, Father's Day, Romans 8, and bacon have in common? You'll find out today on today's episode of the Redemption Recap. Hey, my name is Steven. Thanks for stopping by. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and enjoy today's conversation.
Welcome to the Redemption Recap, reminding you of what is happening here at Redemption. Here is today's episode.
Well, this morning I am joined with my father. Hello.
Hello, Stephen.
Good to have you here. For those of you who are confused at home, my name is Steven, spelled correctly, S-T-E-V-E-N, and your name is?
Steve.
Steve, yes. So if you email Steve at experienceredemption.com, it is going to him and not me. Some of you have made that mistake in the past. So I asked the question, what does my freshman year of high school, 125 pounds of bacon, Romans 8, and Father's Day have in common? This is a riddle. Do you know the answer to the question?
I do not know the answer to the question.
Here's the answer to the question. I weighed 125 pounds my freshman year of high school.
Okay.
125 pounds of bacon is what we gave away yesterday at Father's Day at Redemption Church, where we preached through a portion of Romans chapter 8. So if you got the answer correctly at home, that's a little weird because I'm confused on why you knew how much I weighed my freshman year of high school. But for everyone else, thank you. Dad, thanks for joining us today in our special Father's Day edition as we chat through Romans 8.
I'm looking forward to the conversation. It's going to be fun.
Yes, it will be fun. Did you have a good Father's Day?
I had a great Father's Day. Got to spend it with my oldest daughter, Erica, and her 4 kids, and with Stephen here and his 4 kids, and it was a fun day.
That represents, what, 8 of your...
15
grandkids, halfway
Yeah.
to all of them. Yeah, absolutely. It was a good day. It was a good day at church as well.
It was a great day at church. The smell of bacon in the parking lot brought lots of people in, and it was fun.
Yes.
It was, when we first talked about it, I'm like, I don't know, but it went over well, and we may have to do it again.
I think there was a mass appeal for the bacon, and I was actually a little concerned we weren't going to get rid of all of it at the beginning. Too many people were just walking right by the bacon.
And then, unfortunately, I heard Danny didn't get any.
Somehow, we gave away 125 pounds of bacon, 1,800 pieces of bacon. Not one person was unsatisfied with the bacon experience, except for one.
Danny
Kovacs. And so, Danny, we apologize on behalf of Redemption Church, all of its attenders, its elders, its staff, the future, the past. And we promise that someday in the future, you will receive a piece of bacon from Redemption Church. But in the meantime, we will try to move on. And so anyway, it was a good day at church. Attendance was good.
Attendance was very good.
A lot of people showed up.
And it's always more fun when there are a lot of people there.
Yeah, church is fun. It's more fun when people show up. So thanks for coming. Let's see. We've got VBS coming up next week. I think we're over 165 kids now signed up, which is really cool. And let's see, anything else happened yesterday? I mean, we gave away a lot of bacon. That's pretty much what I remember.
I think that was probably, can't think of anything else that happened yesterday. It was just a good day, and enjoyed, the fathers seemed to enjoy it as well. So, but I would also say there were a lot of mothers standing in line at the bacon line too.
Yeah, well, listen, there seems to be a movement that bacon would not just be a Father's Day thing, but also a Mother's Day thing, which currently on Mother's Day we give out chocolate to everybody, and we give out bacon now apparently on Father's Day. I don't know where this tradition ends.
I don't know, but I did have a few people coming over to the candy dish, getting some chocolate, and then eating their bacon.
Like putting their chocolate on their bacon?
You got it.
Like a bacon sandwich with chocolate in the middle. It's not a bad deal. Yeah, actually, I saw Lisa Roth. If you guys don't know Lisa, she was singing yesterday, and then her daughter was playing keys, and her son was playing on the acoustic guitar and singing, and then their grill was actually the grill that we used for the Great Bacon Day. Anyway, the point of the story was that I saw Lisa sneak into the kitchen, grab a donut, and put her bacon on her donut. So she was experiencing all that we had to offer.
Wait a minute. I saw Lisa in the lobby taking bacon too. So
See,
how many times did Lisa?
Yeah, I think she thinks because it was their grill that she could have as much of the bacon that she wanted. So anyway.
Well, I would just add to that.
Yeah.
Danny, if you did not get a piece of bacon,
Blame
maybe
Lisa.
you should talk to Lisa.
That's actually very true. I think the Roth family owes Danny an apology, and we would expect one forthcoming.
Yeah.
So today what we're going to do is we're going to look a little bit back. We're going to have like a special Father's Day edition of Romans chapter 8 and the redemption recap. So what we're going to do is we're going to look through the passage that we looked through yesterday, but we're going to try to look at it through the lens of a father. And so you're obviously my dad. And I have 4 children of my own now. So some of the text will make sense from the perspective of a young father, while some of it might make more sense from an older father. But we just kind of wanted to review the text again. Now, I have an easy opening question for you, and that was this. For me, as I was reading Romans 8:9, it talks about how you, however, are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if in fact the Spirit of God dwells in you. And so for the audience out there, I just wanted everyone to hear from you. Was I always the perfect child? Did that become immediately known right from the beginning, or was it a couple of years when you realized how perfect of a kid I was?
I'm almost afraid to answer that because I'm afraid lightning might strike if I answer it incorrectly.
The incorrect answer being that
you and perfect, I'm not sure those words can fit in the same sentence.
Yeah, well, that seems...
So I mean, at 2, when you're driving your dad's car away...
That is true.
That probably is a sign that perfection is not going to be. And then when you're 17 and you almost total my car...
Well, I think I did actually total the car.
Well, you did, yes.
I think I'm actually maybe one of the only people that have, like, kind of totaled the same car twice.
Yeah, I would say you might have that
But to be fair... There were no other cars involved either time.
That is true.
So if I'm going to total a car, at least I don't bring other people into it.
That is absolutely true.
Yes.
But you could explain to me,
Okay.
how is Woodville, Ohio, in a direct path from the University of Toledo to a address in South Toledo?
See, I don't know if that's a relevant point for the current conversation.
But that would go with the perfection.
So
thing.
apparently, I had a flesh at a previous time in my life.
Apparently.
Yeah. If you're the quick version of this story, by the way, is that after prom, my junior year of high school, I was instructed by my father to drive immediately home after prom. After prom was at the University of Toledo. We lived in South Toledo. That's about a 12-minute drive.
Yeah.
I turned that 12-minute drive into about a 2-hour drive with a little falling asleep at the wheel and driving over a stop sign in the way, which then I had to call you in the middle of the night, which is every father's like worst nightmare, to get a call at like 4:30 in the morning.
It is.
Yes, and then you had to come pick me up.
I did. And the car was not drivable.
The car was not drivable, but if I do remember correctly, I didn't actually get a ticket.
You did not get a ticket.
No, which was great. I did have to pay the deductible.
You did.
Which was $500. And then I think I was grounded for a month.
I think there was no driving privileges for a month.
Yes. And if you remember, I was supposed to go to either the Sunday night football game or the Monday night football game that day, and I did not go. I was supposed to go with my cousin. I think it was the Browns and somebody else. It was the Sunday night game of the week.
I don't remember that.
I did not go to that either. Anyway, we digress. I think we digress much further into my past than we need to. Okay, so with the obvious exception of me turning out perfect, how you have 4 other children. All right. As I've often described, I'm the perfect middle child. I have an older brother, an older sister, younger brother, younger sister. Most people will know that Josh is also a pastor down in Arizona. And part of this Romans 8 text here is talking about, the moving from the flesh to the spirit and how we grow up in the spirit. And one of my early points of the sermon yesterday was that we can grow in the spirit, but this happens through a lot of different mechanisms. So any advice out there for young fathers or young parents on how do you nurture healthy spiritual life in your children?
I think that one of the primary ways that's done is by being an example yourself. That I did not just send the kids to church. I took the kids to church. They saw my involvement there, whether it was volunteering or being in a position of leadership, that there was an active role there of them being able to watch me, and if they got up early enough, they would see me at my desk reading my Bible and doing those things. Now, I will say, as an older dad, watching you and some of the things that you've incorporated with the kids, boy, I wish I would have done more of that.
Out of curiosity, what do you mean by that? Like which things? Because I'm not sure I'm doing anything that I didn't feel like you did with
Well,
us.
I would suppose that one of the ones is even the little book that you have of Raising Reagan.
The Reagan's Catechism.
Yeah, and the Catechism and the different things that I see you doing with the kids. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I think if I remember some of the spiritual inputs from our childhood, certainly frequent church attendance. I mean, I don't ever remember us going to church without you and Mom being a part of that. You know, you guys were not separate from our church attendance. You were very much a part of it, and were just as involved in things as we were, right? Obviously at an adult level, engaged in whatever was being offered at the time.
And I will say, as you were growing up, being the perfect child.
Yes, I am.
That your siblings, as they dealt with that perfection, they also participated in a lot of things. So just as a point of reference, there was a time where 4 of them were playing travel soccer, and yet it was rare that we missed church.
I can remember maybe a handful of times in my life where we weren't at church on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And even if you were out of town with one of us for soccer, we all still went to church.
Yes.
And at that point in time, we did travel sports, but we did not do travel sports to the detriment of our spiritual life.
No.
They were involved, but they didn't dominate our lives.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I see in some cases where that does dominate someone's life, and I would just encourage you to rethink that. Sports are great, but they're not the primary focus of our life.
Well, we did play a lot of sports. I mean, there's no doubt.
I would say I think this number is correct. I could be wrong, but between the 5 of you, I believe you had over 50 varsity letters.
Yeah, we did.
So they were very active.
Most of those were by me, just to clarify.
Actually, his sister would say she actually has more.
Her math is wrong. But you're right, we did. We had over 50 varsity letters, with the 5 of us, and that obviously starts when you're a kid. Right, and it starts and through middle school and those elementary years when you're doing travel soccer and travel baseball. We didn't do so much travel baseball, but travel soccer and all of those other sports. But church Sunday morning and Wednesday night were a priority. I mean, it was never either or; it was both always.
Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, we were at church.
Yeah, and then you throw on top of that 13 years of private school education for all of us.
Yeah, I always say there's some brick in the back of some closet at TCS that I think I probably own.
Yeah, you should. It should have your name on it. I think we did the math. You paid for 65 years.
65 years
of Toledo Christian.
Yes.
And then also, who knows what the number is, the financial number on top of that.
I have no idea.
Yeah, but the 65 years at Toledo Christian, and then obviously church every Sunday, every Wednesday. And then I also remember there were things that we would do in the house, where we would do family Bible study. And I don't know if that was always through our childhood. There were seasons. It seemed like it was more prominent.
I would, if I look back, that would be a regret that it wasn't more prominent.
Yeah, but I think we had probably very rare nights where all of us were home because of practice and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say that is true.
Yeah, Wednesday night was out of the question because we were always at church, right? Sundays were probably seasons where we were at church at night. But I do remember that we had Bible study as a family, particularly when we were living out in Perrysburg.
Yes.
I think when we were out in Perrysburg, our lives were slightly more simple because we weren't in high school yet. We weren't living by Toledo Christian, so it wasn't as easy. And then when we moved to Toledo Christian, our house just became a free-for-all.
It did, and it was not unusual to have many TCS kids showing up
Yeah,
at our
I
house.
mean, I don't think there was ever a night when there wasn't somebody's friend, hey, can I swing by after school, or I have practice, or I need to take a shower, or whatever.
And for whatever reason, the door wasn't locked, and there would be kids in there. And sometimes I would come home, and
Yeah.
there would just be somebody in there in the house, and I didn't even know who it is. And one of the other things that is interesting of that is Josh, the other one who is a pastor, he would actually have to hide food.
Yes.
Because his sister and her girlfriends would show up, and they would eat all of the snacks, and so Josh would hide food in his bedroom.
Yeah, I don't blame him. I mean, I don't blame him at all. This was Bidenomics, so groceries weren't quite as ridiculous as they are now. But and Costco didn't even exist
No.
at this point. So at least not in Toledo. So I can't imagine what the grocery bill was with the five of us, all of our friends over all of the time. But all of that was part of, I think, the spiritual nurturing that was going on in our home.
I think so, and I look at Toledo Christian as a supplement to what we were doing. Yes, you got the education, but you also there was a definite Christian base there that was important.
Yeah, well, and Toledo Christian was helpful, and I've said this often. Outside of you guys, our churches, which was really three churches that we predominantly went to. Toledo Christian was probably the third biggest influence in my life, and there's a great value in choosing a great education, and where you send your kids.
And it is, and I would say that probably has, among other things, just your interest in Revere and what
Yeah.
we've done there.
Absolutely.
So-
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the value of, I saw the value of Toledo Christian, I saw the value of Hillsdale then, later. And I think one of the other things that also always struck me, you say, setting an example is one of the best ways to nurture spiritual. If I remember two things. One, I do remember you praying the Aaronic blessing over us at night. And then I remember also that no matter what was going on in our lives, sports, houses, all of these different things, that you and Mom were always faithful with the tithe. That was never something that slipped.
It just was something that we started at the beginning and have always done, and I believe in it. So,
And I think you were hitting probably the top three excuses people would make, right? Whether it was, I have a lot of kids, I send them to private school, or they play travel sports.
yeah, those are all reasons why we would say I can't afford to tithe.
Yeah, and most people would use those as the three easy exit ramps.
Yes.
And you guys were doing all of those things, and I mean, you guys had a fine living, fine business, whatever. But it's not like you were fabulously wealthy or something. It had to have been difficult.
There were times
Yeah.
where there was a temptation of like, do I write this check?
Sure.
And the same way with sending you to a Christian school.
Right.
There were times where that check was bigger than the mortgage check. So
I imagine, and I would think too, having hindsight now and looking back, where you see, I mean, the fruit it has certainly bared in my life and Josh's life, not just ours, our siblings as well.
And even as I look back at Erica and Aaron and Jill, still some of your closest friends are relationships that were built at Toledo Christian.
Yeah.
And what you had there.
Yeah, that's very true. And of course, then now playing out from a spiritual perspective, right? As Josh and I certainly would say that much of our ministry is built on our home life and our experience at Toledo Christian.
I would, and then in addition to the church life and what we learned there, both at Calvary primarily, and then at Cedar Creek.
Yeah. And I would say this is it is a generational thing too. We verse 11 in Romans 8 talks about, if the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ Jesus from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his spirit who dwells in you. You were mentioning earlier how that promise of that verse around Father's Day means a lot to you. Why is that?
This would be my second Father's Day that I didn't have my dad, and so It's a bittersweet day because of what you went through, of being at church 3 days a week. That was my upbringing. From the time I was 5, I remember going to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, and we lived in East Toledo. So if any of you are familiar with the High Level Bridge, that was basically my backyard. I lived on Greenwood, which is right next to the bridge, and we played under there, and we went to church over on Airport Highway near Burns. So we would make that drive, and then the other thing that was going on there that I remember is it always seemed like we were picking somebody else up for church. That there were some widows that didn't have a way, and so we would stop and pick them up, or there would be a youth. There was a young kid that lived over near Danny Thomas Park, and we would pick him up and bring him to church. And so that was just that was what my mom and dad did, and that was the example that they set for me. And then, fortunately, you and your siblings got to know him very well as well. For him to be a part of your life and to impact it. So it wasn't just a father, but it was a grandfather that is a part of your heritage and a part of this legacy. And so this verse, as I am saddened by the loss of my dad here on this earth, I know I have a promise that I will see him. I don't know exactly what that looks like or how that works, but it is the hope that we have, and Paul encourages us to live in that hope. And so yeah, these verses, as you say, almost every week are as relevant today as the day they were written. And so I can rest in that hope. I can have a sadness of losing my dad, but yet a great heritage of what he did, and then the great privilege of just watching you and Josh and Erica and Jill and how you guys interact with your kids. So.
Yeah, and we called him Poppy, my grandfather. And people around the church will know. Usually every Sunday, I wear a ring that I took from him as a reminder of him, and particularly when I'm preaching. And every once in a while, I did it once last year, and I did it once this year. I preach out of his old King James Bible that I used to read in their basement. It would lay on the basement, it had those nice gold pages, and I think I was 6 or 7 when I started playing with that Bible. But I think what you're hinting at there, first, of course, the great promise that our lives are, yes, they're temporary on this earth, but then there is the promise of eternity. And in the nuance of the way we live out our Christian faith or talk about our Christian faith now, sometimes we can almost become too sophisticated for our own good and move past some of the basic promises of death, but life eternal in Christ, future resurrection.
It is without the resurrection, Paul says, there's no hope. That's what this is based on. That because Jesus was raised, we are going to be, and so it's a great promise, and it is a hope. I heard an old preacher a long time ago saying something about religion just being a crutch. And the old preacher's response was, well, when you got a broken leg, a crutch is a good thing. And we are broken people, and so these words give us comfort, give us encouragement, they challenge us to do what you talked about yesterday, of not living in the flesh, but living in the spirit. And it is a challenge. Our flesh it has a strong appeal, and it has a strong pull on us, but we can overcome it, and we can live in the spirit. So
yeah, I think we see at the end of the passage, at least that particular passage we were looking at, I believe it was verse 13, it talks about that process. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. And I drew out this idea that there are kind of two different ways that people go with this text. One way they go is that Paul is just kind of recapping what he's already said. And then I was suggesting a different way, that Paul is actually continuing on with this thought, and that when he gets into verse 13, he's actually talking more about earthly, I'll call it death, not necessarily breathing your last, but just the destruction of that which is good, and then, or earthly life, in living what I refer to as the abundant life. We have these kind of four boxes, where in one side there's the, you're not condemned, that's a win, but also you live out the abundant life as you are obedient. Did you have any thoughts on that yesterday as we were working through it?
I think, unfortunately, many of us don't live in that box. That we are saved. We have allowed Jesus to redeem us, but there are areas where we're struggling with Him being Lord and King in our life, and where this battle of flesh and spirit still tempts us and gets us, and so I think your explanation of that passage was enlightening and was good, and so I would challenge us that if there are areas where the flesh is winning, to yield those to Him and to allow Him to work in your life to change it, because He really did say He wanted to give us an abundant life, and so He's given us salvation. We are redeemed, but there is much more to it than just being redeemed. There's an abundant life that He wants us to live here, and sin brings death. And that's true even in us as Christians, that if we do things that we know are contrary to His will, it's going to create issues for us. There are going to be problems.
And a lot of times those problems don't manifest themselves immediately.
No. Sometimes they take time to grow, and often we don't know what those unintended consequences are going to be, and so they create problems later down the road in our life. Sometimes they're immediate. Sometimes we know.
Sure.
But often it's down the road when we experience those. So Paul's challenge here, the Romans is one of the greatest letters ever written, and chapter 8 is right in the middle of it, and so these passages, I think Paul's getting right to the heart of it, that our tendency is to go this way, and he's encouraging us and urging us to allow the Spirit to change us. And as I look back, I'll be 65 in October. It's like, I wish some of those things He would have changed, or I would have allowed Him to change in me a long time ago. But I'm grateful that He's patient and He's loving, and even as I grow older, that He's still changing me and He's still working in me, and that process will never end. But I encourage you and I challenge you, just be honest with yourself, be honest with Him, and take these passages serious, and allow Him to work in your life, because He does want to change you, and He does want to give you an abundant life. So,
yeah, we spent a lot of this time talking about the way spiritual legacy in the positive is passed down, right? The things that I learned from you, the things that you had learned from my grandfather, your father, and then the way that is now being passed out. And hopefully, in many regards, you're building upon those things, right?
Yep.
And so what He poured into you, you poured into me, I'm now pouring into my children. And many of us, all of us, I would hope, watching this would say, yeah, we want to do that into this generation. And that, the platform, for lack of a better term, that I or Josh have now are, numerically speaking, larger platforms than what you or Poppy ever had, right? And not knowing where anyone is right now in this generational line, it's the encouragement to start where you're at.
I look at my dad. He came from a divorce situation in the late in the 1950s, which in the 1950s divorce was
rare.
It was rare,
Yeah.
and so he was less than 10 years old when his dad left, and so he started something new, and having a marriage that lasted almost 65 years. And then in a legacy of getting us to church. And a lot of that I point back to my grandmother and her her prayers, and I know that her prayers were not only for my dad, but her prayers were for me as well. And so that legacy that she started, but also the change that my dad made by having a poor example of a father, but that he made and that he poured into me. Was he a perfect father? No, he wasn't. Was I a perfect father? No, I wasn't. Is Stephen, even though he says he was a perfect son, okay, well,
I tried to help you out.
Yeah.
By being perfect.
Is he a perfect father? No. But he's building on all those things, and I look at him and Josh and my sons-in-law and the things that they're doing and the love that they have for their kids, and I can see a legacy that's been passed down. So
yeah, and with that then comes the responsibility of also making sure that you don't pass down the opposite, which is what the end of the passage is. Yep. To take care of it, for by the Spirit put to death the things of the flesh. And so really, to anyone out there, mother or father or unmarried person, that the decisions that you're making affect the future. They affect the generations down the road. There will be conversations and podcasts or whatever we're doing 50 years from now of people talking about the generational line that you started. And so put to death the things of the flesh, and then bring to life the things of the Spirit, and allow the fruit of the Spirit to be born through you, and see the impact that it will have. Hey, thank you so much, Dad, for joining us today.
Thank you for the invite, Steve. It was fun.
And everyone, thanks for watching today's Redemption Recap. If you haven't already, please subscribe either on Spotify or YouTube so you know when anything is coming out. Make sure you're following Redemption Church on social media, that you're subscribed to the Daily Dig, and that you make it to church every single Sunday. Thanks for being here.
The Redemption Recap is an extension of Redemption Church. For more information about the church, please visit experienceredemption.com. Thanks for stopping by.